night, the city of Lagos went agog as all routes.
Be the first to know. CORETV News. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa, we break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are CORETV News.
Welcome to CORETV.
A 24-hour news station.
It's a beautiful Saturday morning here in Lagos, the commercial city of Nigeria. Now, Saturday comes with a lot of fun. Nigerians go out there with the Owambe's weddings here and there. But with the recent Ebola scare, many people are sitting back at home and, running away from all the hustling and the bustling that comes with Saturdays. But thank you for staying there, joining us on Cool Digest, your ultimate news and current affairs show right here, exclusive to CORETV News. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Sometimes last year, if I'm not mistaken, around October 1st, the dream of the defunct National Conference was given birth to, where Mr. President talked about organizing a conference that would bring Nigerians all across to discuss issues from governance to devolution of power to resource control, several other things except the division and the dissolubility of the Nigerian nation. Amazingly, it's coming 100 years after the emergence of what they call the Southern and the Northern Protectorates coming together. It's the amalgamation year. It's the centenary year for Nigeria. The conference is over now, but we're still talking how and exactly did he go and what impact will this conference have on the quality of governance in Nigeria, bearing in mind that we had several others in the past. Now, I'm joined on the show this morning by a veteran. He is actually a university don, a professor of international law for over 20 years and still counting, former vice chancellor of the Ekiti State University, former University of Ado-Ekiti, and of course, he was also a member of the National Conference. Now, Professor, I would want you to, with pride, mention your name for us.
Well, I'm Akin Oyebode. I think your intro captured my persona. I don't know what else to add, except to remind your viewers that as a younger man, I was a broadcaster.
Oh, wow.
After my sixth form, I was a broadcaster on Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation. So I'm used to reading the news and anchoring programs and doing request programs and whatever.
Fantastic. So I have a co-broadcaster when it's brought in the show this morning. You told me earlier about how you had close to 10 of your former students together with you at the National Conference. What's the feeling like for you?
Well, I pride myself in the success of those that passed through my hands.
Okay.
It was a scintillating experience to have your former students rising up to speak and make critical contributions to discussions. Some of them were senior advocates of Nigeria, professors of law, commissioners, name it. It was a most worthwhile experience. I enjoyed every minute of it. And, but I must say that the delegates to the National Conference comprised men and women of distinction with impressive track records. Like Femi Falana told me a few months back that no election could have produced that galaxy of personalities.
I see.
Those who are very highly accomplished, who are brought together by sheer circumstance to contribute whatever quota they have into the national discourse.
We'll get there. Let me spend some moments with you. 41 years of teaching experience, and you're still counting.
Yeah.
What has kept you going? I don't know if you're this hilarious with your students because, professorship comes with a lot of halo around you and then a lot of distance between you and those you teach. But what's the feeling like for you?
Well, I think with my eyes wide open, opted for an academic career. because I had a role model in one of my teachers who used to come to class with scarcely any notes and took the class through in a very impressive manner. That's when I was studying the Ukraine. I went to Kyiv State University. And the professor of international law, Professor Igor Ivanovich Lukashuk, was inimitable in his style, in his mien, in his dressing, and everything about him. He was very charismatic, and he inspired me to wanting to become an academic. And so when I came back from the then Soviet Union in 1973,
where you almost married a Russian girl.
yes, that's true. I went to Unilag, and I've not looked back since 1973.
I see.
December. As to what my profile or what my attitude is, you might better ask my former students or my present students. I know students have told me that after they brave it to come closer to me, that my back is worse than my bite, you know, that I just have this exterior, this veneer of aloofness and academe, which, well, not terrorizes, but students find intimidating. But those that come to me closer or that I supervise, they know that it's just a veneer, it's not the reality. But I enjoy the classroom because at least within the four walls of the class, you are Lord and Master. The concept of academic freedom. We are all engaged in the search for truth, and you exchange ideas with your students. There's a lot of interaction, questions, answers, comments, and what have you. And every day for me, every lecture is an event to be celebrated.
It's all right.
Yes.
Let's turn our attention now to the national conference. It has come and gone, but the memory of all the issues and the circumstances surrounding it still lingers. One would think primarily, of course, Nigerians cannot stop talking about the 3 or 4 million naira that you guys earned monthly, and that also raised a lot of dust of controversy in the early days of the conference. But how would you describe the unity of Nigerians? How united really are we from what you saw at the national conference?
Let me begin by correcting the false and misleading statement that we earned 4 million naira every month. It was far less than that.
How much was it?
It was, well, I said 2.8 million. 1.4 million for a 2-week period.
Okay.
And that covers your hotel expenses, covers your feeding, transportation, and incidentals. Then traveling up and down. For those of us who are not resident or domiciled in Abuja, whose family is in Lagos, you have to fly backwards and forwards to meet all manner of obligations, social or otherwise. But I'm not complaining about being paid far more than I earn as a professor.
Okay.
Because I've been a professor for more than 20 years.
I was going to ask that. Did you ever earn that on a monthly basis?
There's no professor except he's a vice chancellor, as far as I know, who earns 500,000 naira per month. It's 400 and something thousand per month. So giving us maybe 4 times that, or even almost more than 5 times that, it's an experience. But it's far less than what the legislators earn. I was reliably informed that a senator's salary is in the region of 29 million per month. So really, I think Nigeria got value for whatever it paid in terms of the stature and standing and antecedents of those who had the good fortune to be at the national conference. I don't think we should put money value on it, but that's an aside. In terms of what it felt like to participate in discussing the future of Nigeria, well, it's an experience in a lifetime. It's opened one's eyes to the contradictions that lie within the polity. In fact, it opened up to me personally the fault lines of the Nigerian state. We take too much for granted. But I think the conference exposed the entrails, the interstices of governance in Nigeria and the attitudinal chemistry of the participants in terms of where they are coming from, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of religion, in terms of attitude generally to the enterprise that we call Nigeria. We take so much for granted in this country. But when you participate in such deliberations for about 4 or 5 months, you have greater, maybe better insight into how Nigeria is structured and the various contending forces that are at play within the Nigerian polity. One thing that I would want to say is that we are still very much a nation in the process of becoming. Nigeria is not yet a nation. We're a country of different ethnic groups, different nationalities, cohabiting and engaging in this experiment, this effort at creating a nation. Okay? Nigeria is a contraption put together by imperialist interests, Britain in particular. Whilst we might be celebrating the centenary of Nigeria, a la Frederick Lugard, the reality of the situation is that Nigeria is still very much a work in progress.
The conference saw a lot of arguments, people talking along ethnic nationalities line. Did you see the willingness of these people, diverse people, willing to work together and stay together as a nation?
Well, your opening statements reminded viewers that there was a no-go area, that we were not supposed to discuss the possibility of putting an end to Nigeria. There has been a lot of brouhaha in the public domain about 2015 being a game changer, that Nigeria might very well be in the past tense in 2015. So that maybe lay behind the hearts and minds of the participants that we did not want to really put an end to Nigeria as we know it. So nobody ever said that we should, as people used to say, go to your tents, or Israel, and what have you. No, I think there was this presupposition that Nigeria was going to survive and continue to thrive far long after the national confab. So secession or dissolution of Nigeria was not on the cards. But in terms of the operations of Nigeria, in terms of the disparities that inform the Nigerian state, of course, all those issues came to the fore. Interestingly enough, many people felt that religion was going to tear us apart. But the Committee on Religion, co-chaired by Bishop Ajakaye, Catholic Bishop of Ekiti, and Alhaji Lemo, a young delegate representing the Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs, showed so much camaraderie and backslapping. And they handled the matter, in fact, adroitly. And in fact, when they presented their report, the presentation was met with a standing ovation. Two younger elements who wanted to put all the antipathies and animosities behind them and to carve a different portal for coexistence. That look, in fact, I remember Alhaji Lemu saying that Bishop Ajakaye was his brother from a different mother, and there was so much wisecracking. So the Committee on Religion, I think, set the tone, because they were one of the earliest committees to present their report. They set the tone of amity, of understanding and mutual respect and love, brotherhood and what have you. And so that it created a niche for the conference. And quite frankly, many of the problematic areas that we thought were going to cause us a lot of discomfiture sailed through. It was the last committee report which drew people to a brink. That's the Committee on Devolution of Power.
Yeah.
We had different committees. Their reports were toughly argued, but we came to not unanimity, but I would say consensual agreement in terms of the propriety of the suggestions and recommendations from the various committees.
We'll get to all of those details, but in the course of the conference, some delegates paid the ultimate price. One of them was the former NAFDAC boss. Some people actually died during that conference. What significance did that have, and what was the feeling like when that happened?
Well, the demise of, I believe, 4 members of the conference was sad. But then in life, when your time is up, your time is up. Even if you are not at the conference, if you are destined to die, death is a fact of life. So we honor the dead, 1 minute silence, letters of commiserations to the family and all that, and we continued business. But definitely the death of delegates was a very sad development. And then when you look at the age of many of the delegates, people of advanced years, the oldest delegate, if I remember, was 92 years old. And he made an impression because he was a celebrated jurist, and people took his contributions with a lot of respect. Then there were younger delegates. I remember the youngest, who was 24, who spoke very brilliantly. She has a very personable young lady who feels concerned about the country, Miss Mandara from Borno State. And we had other younger people. We had members from civil society organizations. We have representatives from the states, party representatives, pressure groups, something reminiscent of ethnic nationalities, the minorities from different parts of the country. Then you had delegations representing the geopolitical zones, that the 6 geopolitical zones we have. Then the socio-cultural and political organizations throughout the country. The conference consisted of a variety. It's a mixed bag of delegates. And because of, as I said, the advance in the years of some delegates, death was inevitable.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, beyond that, towards the end of the conference, Nigerians were worried at the sight of empty seats. Just towards the end, and even the federal government started talking as regards delegates attending proceedings and all of that. What was responsible for that? Many have said maybe it depicts the dwindling in the energy and enthusiasm with which the conference started.
Well, I can only speak for myself, because some delegates believe that there should be life after the confab. And they should take care of their business so that they would not just fall into discomfiture. So they attended some personal issues. But there was a standing rule that if you are going to travel abroad, you needed to inform the administration of the conference. And you had to write a letter indicating the purpose, the duration, and what have you. Then if you were, you had to attend to your health. There was a clinic. So some people, because of illness, might not have attended. But we had registers signed.
Okay.
You know, so the secretariat is in a better position to indicate absenteeism or truancy, just like in the universities that we take attendance. If you look at the National Assembly too, although the architecture of the National Assembly is a very quaint type structure, it's not like the architecture of parliaments in other countries that we know of. I don't know who approved that design. It's a very lousy design. the National Assembly. You know, I think we could do with a reworking of the structure. But the way, especially the House of Representatives chamber, it gives the impression that the places usually have empty. And even in the red chamber, the Senate chamber too, as I said, the architects blew it in terms of the design. If you go to any parliament that we know of, even the Portuguese parliament or Italian parliament, you know, not to talk of the Duma in Russia or whatever, the chambers, universally, you go to Colombia, you go to Brazil, it's a universal thing, you know, in terms of the structure. Even the hall we use at the Kutigi Hall, or the assembly hall that we used, it was the best conference chamber they could find in Abuja to accommodate us in terms of, you had 400, nearly 500 delegates. But you see, the amphitheater of parliamentary discourse is what, you know, semicircular, and then you have the aisles in between. That's how a parliament should. We were not a parliament. We were just a conference. So if you take a look, because of the labeling, you say many people are not here. But people come late, depending on when you take the census.
I see.
So, but I must say that by and large, some people were very regular. And they spoke. And they had even nicknames because of the familiarity that was bred through their interventions.
Initially, the delegates were 492, 6 other nominations were added, but the APC did not bring nominations. I mean, did not bring their nominees. So that made the total number to be 496. How would you describe the credibility of this national conference relative to the ones we had in the past?
Now, as I said, I was not a participant in the previous conference. It was my first entree into that type of arrangement.
Okay.
But as I said earlier on, the caliber of men and women that you had represented was extremely impressive. Okay, proving credentials. We had former presidents of Senate, former speakers of the Senate, former senators, former legislators, former ministers, former chairmen of parastatals, academics, younger people, also a variety of, I said it was a galaxy of stars in this country. I don't think you can have a better composition. I can't speak for the APC. I don't belong to the APC. But I know there were people who espoused the views of APC, even though the APC was not represented. For instance, I was a nominee of Ekiti State. The governor of Ekiti, Governor Kayode Fayemi, nominated me to represent Ekiti North. So I can speak that for others who fell into that category, non-partisan, but with a broad mind, an eye view, and to make contributions to make Nigeria a better place. So in terms of representation, it's true we were not elected. We were nominated or selected. But most delegates put that behind them because we had a job to do. As we proceeded, we developed some rapport amongst ourselves about the necessity, to borrow a hackneyed expression, to move Nigeria forward. And different people, especially the women, we had different coalitions. The women agenda people did a lot of work to put the woman issue on the front burner. Labor was well represented, okay? They lead the highest echelons of the trade unions were there represented, and they put across the views of the working class. Okay. I happen to have been on the Committee on Foreign Policy and Diaspora Matters. My committee had about 13 former ambassadors, and had about 4 professors, political science, law, name it. So we had distinguished representation. We had about 40 generals, former generals. That's including Army, Navy, Air Force.
So
Really experienced people. I can tell you that sitting right behind me was General Zamani Lekwat, one of our most erudite military officers, a product of the Indian Military Academy. And my interaction with him and with other generals, former generals in the Nigerian military, showed me that we had the best feet forward, okay, in that particular confab. As I said, you had so many professors from different disciplines, from soil science to gender to economics, so name it. It was a potpourri of men and women and of ideas, and it was a sight to behold, actually, and to really cover. You as a reporter will have had a ball if you were to cover the proceedings of that particular conference.
It's all right. Let's get down to some interesting issues that were brought to fore during the conference. Initially, at the start of the conference, there was efforts to ensure that the proceedings or the people there are not divided along religious lines. And then the second anthem of the, what's it called now, of the national anthem, the second stanza of the national anthem was adopted as prayers. The same thing that NOA is doing, that during public meetings, Nigerians should not pray as Christians or Muslims. They should adopt the second stanza. Amazingly, at the end of the conference, we noticed you have, resolved that we should go back to the old national anthem. What would question the rationale behind that?
Well, as I said, so many of the elements of nationhood came to be reworked and reinterpreted and reconfigured. They burst into the old national anthem when a matter was adopted. It was spontaneous. It wasn't rehearsed. And it falls in line with the general attitude of Nigerians when they are protesting goings on. They sing the old national anthem, which they thought was more effective in capturing the Nigerian psyche. Don't forget that the national anthem that we have now was produced under General Obasanjo, and the police officer who composed it, Mr. Odiase, Nigerian, good national anthem, but it did not strike the chord with Nigeria we hail thee, who saw themselves as though tribe and tongue may differ in brotherhood. When you look at the wordings of the original national anthem, even though it was not authored by a Nigerian, it reflected the reality, and the being of the Nigerian. And I think that is what happened. If you recall in the proceedings, I suggested that the name Nigeria should be changed.
I was going to get there. United States of Shanghai. Where did you get that from?
Well, we missed that opportunity in 1960. On the 6th of March, when Gold Coast became independent, Nkrumah's genius was revealed in changing the name, the colonial name of Gold Coast, to Ghana. We had the ancient West African kingdoms, Guinea, Ghana, Songhai, Mali, all those ancient kingdoms were resurrected to give a new focus by the former colonized people to a new nation. The name Nigeria was given to us by Flora Shaw, the consort of Frederick Lugard. She wrote an article in the London Times in 1898 that why don't we call these people Nigeria, from the word nigger, Niger, and nigr, Negro, black. The Latin is black, but when you say nigger, it's the N word. It's derogative, pejorative description of black people. So it's like nigger area, and we thought was insulting. But I wasn't very original in my suggestion. In 1960, there was a very distinguished member of the House, Dr. Kalu Ezera, who came brandishing degrees from University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, and Oxford. He had a doctorate from Oxford. And he made that suggestion in 1960 at the Federal House of Representatives. It was laughed to scorn. So I merely wanted to bring the old idea of Kalu Ezera And people too, in fact, my children asked me, Daddy, what is Songhai?
But why Songhai?
Songhai was an old West African empire.
Okay.
Just reinventing the past to give a new stamp to what you call Nigeria.
It actually sounds more like a Chinese name or something.
No, actually it extends to the northwest of Nigeria.
Okay.
You know, you have El Kanemi, for instance, what you call Borno State. You had the Oyo Empire. You had Benin Empire. We had different Songhai had some relationship with the northwestern part of Nigeria. So it's people who lack historical knowledge that might be surprised. And I wasn't surprised at my own children who queried it, because history has been removed from the syllabus of Nigerian education. We now have, I think, the government or social studies. History has become endangered in Nigeria. People don't know where they are coming from, so they don't know where we are now. And they cannot make any ideas or suggestions as to where we should be going. History is a very critical subject to really put us right in terms of, our antecedents. So I wasn't surprised that people would make fun of it, but I told them that it will have given a new stamp to Nigeria. So we were in an effort to rethink. It was like Renaissance for Nigeria. And if it had been carried, I would have been gratified. The new national anthem, which is the old national anthem, which we approved of, again, it has some historical dimension to it. There are more than 600 recommendations made by the National Conference, where policy matters, legal matters, social matters. So, and some people even felt that maybe we were to create a new constitution for Nigeria. And the vehemence with which delegates, especially from the northern part of the country, attacked the so-called draft constitution because they said it was a new constitution by ambush. I think it was not creative enough of those who assailed that idea, because the constitution that we have in operation, what people call the 1999 constitution, which is actually the Abdul Salam constitution, in that confab, I said it had expired. It was a fraudulent constitution foisted on Nigeria, masquerading as a popular constitution. If you look at the preamble, say, we, the people, having done this, that, have agreed. When did we meet? When did we agree? That's why the patriot said that constitution told a lie against itself. So, and the constitution was quasi-federal. It's almost unitary. You have everything in Abuja, including the appointment of judges, births and deaths, marriage, so many things. It doesn't reflect true federalism. You need a constitution that will capture the basic requirements of a federal government. And so some of us really felt it was an opportunity for us to reinvent Nigeria as we know it. And I tell you what, again, I'm not making myself a hero out of this. I told the confab that I had lived and studied in 3 federations. I don't think anybody else in that confab had my experience in terms of going through how a federal system works. And I told them that one of the federal states where I studied had become defunct. That's the Soviet Union. But there are 2 other countries where I lived and studied that practice federation. In fact, the oldest federation we have, United States of America. And also, of course, I took my doctorate in Canada. So I know 1 or 2 things about a federal setup. And Nigeria does not answer to the criteria, to the desiderata of a federal setup. So we need to rework the conditions of our cohabitation. We need a new constitution. Let's run away from that fact. The Abdul Salam constitution is no longer appropriate for our times.
But what's the position of this conference on the structure of government in Nigeria?
Well, the conference made a number of critical recommendations reflecting the elements of a true federal structure.
Okay.
For instance, some people wanted a return to the regions, okay? At least the Western group, they wanted Southwest, what you call Southwest. But that was not to be. But we now agreed or recommended that states that so desire can federate, they can come together.
Okay.
Okay, so nothing stops the southwestern, what you call a southwestern state, for coming together, as it were, to harmonize their policies and do all sorts of things, to put the locus of power back in the federating units. Another important thing that we suggested was that the states should be the federating units. And then you have the federal government. So the old issue of putting local governments as a third tier is in the past tense. We suggested that all the local governments should be removed, should be deleted from the constitution. So it's a matter for every state to create as many local governments as it wants. That will not be stopped at the federal level, unlike what happened to Lagos State when new local government development areas had to be truncated at the Abuja exercise. So we have tried to restructure Nigeria in terms of the federating units. Something that might interest you also is that states as federating units that desire can have their own police. You know, the question of state police had been of long-standing debate in this country. Why should we just have one inspector general that will police, and you bring people from far-flung corners of the country to areas they don't understand, they don't know the language and what have you. And that's why we have a rising incidence of criminality, and the Boko Haram is a testament to the necessity for arming, at least for empowering the state so that they take charge of security. I mean, will you bleakly call governors chief security officers of their states? But you disempower and disembowel them. You tie their hands behind their backs. They can't give instructions or directives to the commissioners of police. The commissioner of police will have to refer such instructions to either the IGP or the president. That's a joke. Chief security indeed, that can't deploy forces and whatever. So things like that have changed. I suggested, for instance, along these lines, that the name of the head of the judiciary in the state should revert to Chief Justice instead of Chief Judge. It's the military that came up with this nonsense. Chief Judge in the state, Chief Justice in Nigeria. Before, in the 1963 Constitution, we had Chief Justices. Each region had its own constitution. Okay? Even the Western region went to the extent of having its own Court of Appeal. So we've done all sorts of things along those lines to empower the federating units, okay, instead of everybody looking up to Abuja.
But the conference also suggested an additional new 18 states. Some have questioned, in a time where most states of the country are depending on allocation revenue coming from the federal government, when you really dig deep to find out what the internally generated revenues are, you'll be surprised. How does this complement the federating units you mentioned earlier?
Well, mine was a dissenting view in terms of state creation. But if you ask me quite frankly, I think that was merely a political statement to assuage the yearnings of those who want relevance. The argument is you want to bring government closer to the people. But you know, Dr. Akin Oyebode has just defended his PhD thesis at the Deputy President of Senate. He went to my law school in Toronto, Osgood Hall Law School, about 2 years ago to give the Oputa lectures. And he said Nigeria was operating a feeding bottle federalism. So the states are babies. They go to Abuja once every month to have their feeding bottle replenished. So we have a caricature of a federal setup. And if you really want viable federating units, you needed to collapse, if you ask me, even the existing 36 states into maybe 6 or 8 federating units. That was part of what you call the Yoruba agenda at the conference. I must tell you, the Yoruba agenda was 317 pages. It was like a doctoral thesis. I don't know any group that came out with such well thought out, erudite proposal. But in the event, the Yoruba lost their quest for regional government. They just had a shock in terms of possibilities of bringing together those who are willing. What I'm suggesting is that you say the confab is a mirror of Nigerian social and political reality. Okay, we could not just create a new Nigeria out of nothing. Now, those 18 states that were proposed are proposals. What I know had universal acceptance was the necessity for parity among the geopolitical zones. The people from the southeast argue that they've been shortchanged in terms of the number of states within their area. But the confab said, okay, give them one extra state. I don't know where that state is going to be carved from, within the southeast, so that they will be at par, roughly, with the other geopolitical zones. That's the only one that I think had universal appeal. The others were responses to the yearnings of representatives, those who want to take something back home, to say, I want you this request. But for me, it's still going to be a long shot to have 18 more states, because those babies that we have, they are infantile and they've refused to grow up. But the confab gave a condition, that viability. Okay, if a state can be viable, then that state will be dead on arrival. And for viability, the indices will have to be worked out. If you can't pay your keep, because I think we should move away from going every time to Abuja. And we have to, in fact, devolution of power. We have to devolve power back, put power back to the federating units. You reduce the items on the exclusive list and bring more items. Like, I'll give you an example. Railways now have been brought to the concurrent list, so that states that want to have railways, like the old western states, they wanted a railway to cut across the southwest. If it becomes law now, then of course states can go into development of railways, airports, all sorts of things, which were the exclusive preserve of the federal government. But the catch here is that the president of the country, in his speech 4 days ago, has removed the bottom from all the effort of the National Assembly, of the confab, by saying that the report was going to be taken to the Council of State and the National Assembly. So that report is going to BID, brought in dead.
What were you expecting before a referendum?
It's not just expected. Some of us said it at the confab, that if you don't go to a referendum, the effort, the money, the chair, and where everything we put will have been a waste. So it seems to me that the president was speaking from both sides of the mouth. That this, your conference, has been worthwhile. We're going to make it worth its pay. But again said, we won't, without prejudice to the power of the National Assembly, their capacity. So I don't know. I don't know where.
What's the implication of taking it to the National Assembly?
Well, I'm on record as having said that the National Assembly, in my view, will shoot it down. Because we've come up with all sorts of things which the National Assembly feels aggrieved by. I remember about 3 months ago, a very important senator said that they were going to shoot down the proposals at the confab if the proposals come to them. Now, I don't know what has happened now to give the president the renewed confidence in the National Assembly doing the needful. Is the National Assembly ready to commit political suicide? Are they going to bite the bullet and disempower themselves? Because they felt, for me, a sense of goose pimples when we were conducting the deliberations. They felt that the confab has stolen their thunder. Okay, and I remember we invited a chairman of a committee in the National Assembly to come and appear before us, and the chairman was not amused at all that we were summoning a chairman of the National Assembly to appear before a committee of the National Conference. That who were we? And the chairman now invited the members of the committee to the house, and I warned my committee that, please don't dare, because we'll be losing something out politically if we all go on a bus and go and appear before. So I'm saying there was a tussle for political relevance.
I see.
So I don't know if it is wise. I thought that the president of Nigeria will be able to summon the courage, political will, to go on top of the National Assembly and address the nation on the report of the National Assembly and ask the nation to exercise their franchise, because sovereignty ultimately belongs to the people, not the National Assembly. The National Assembly are not sovereign. They have some authority because of the election, but ultimately in the final analysis, the people are the repository of sovereignty. And
just a minute. The opposition has always claimed that there is a seemingly political agenda as regards this national conference. Possibly Mr. President saw that all these agendas that he wants are not part of your resolution, and possibly that's why it's going to the National Assembly, just like the opposition would say.
Well, that's a very interesting idea. In fact, towards the end of our proceedings, delegates from, I'm talking generally now, not all delegates, some delegates from the north smelt a rat, that the so-called draft constitution was called a draft constitution in order to insulate the president from any allegation of going for a third term. The president has been sworn into office twice. And the jurisprudence in Nigeria is that once you've been sworn into office twice, then that should foreclose your possibility of going for a third term. The counter view is that he was not sworn into office twice, that he just enjoyed the residue of the tenure of Yar'Adua, the late Yar'Adua. But the matter definitely will be decided in court. If and when President Jonathan says he wants to run for office, I'm sure some people will go and challenge the propriety of such an intention. So what some people say that if we call what we are doing a new constitution, then it will not, his tenure will be extended. It will be a clean slate for him to run under the new dispensation. And so it was a thinly veiled blackmail of the administration of the conference that no, we are not playing Jonathan's agenda. And Jonathan came to the conference to say he has no agenda. If you believe him that he had no agenda, then I would have thought that he could also have used the doctrine of necessity. It's a fatuous doctrine. It didn't apply when it was used to enable him become acting president. I'm saying with the same token, because nothing succeeds like success, he could have gone ahead on top of the heads of the National Assembly by subjecting the proceedings to a national referendum. And it will have amounted to a revolutionary decision because it's not provided for. But a revolution in jurisprudence is a change in government in a way not contemplated by the legal order. And my late colleague, Abiola Ojo, made some immortal statement that a successful revolution begets its own legality. So if Jonathan had mustered the courage or political will, he would have gotten away with it. But in the event, he developed cold feet and succumbed to the National Assembly. I think the matter is still out because we've not had the last of the recommendations, if of the National Conference, if not Jonathan, somebody in the future will go back to the attempt to marry the extant constitution, the present constitution, with the new one, because the National Conference Secretariat did a marvelous job in its draft. It had on the one column the existing provisions of the constitution, in the middle recommendations of the conference, and the third column how to marry the two. It's the third column that creates this new constitution that a lot of hulabaloo was brought up against.
Well, what do you make of the 6-year single-term tenure for presidents and governors as proposed by Mr.
No,
President?
there's no, I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of that. I think it's another red herring that people are saying. There's nowhere where that draft says that a president will have 6 years. 2 terms of 4 years is what is contained. People just went, as I said, a red herring. So I think they just wanted to make a mountain of a molehill. It wasn't in the draft constitution that the Secretariat produced. He just wanted to call a dog a bad name in order to kill it.
Did you remove the immunity clause for elected officials?
That's correct.
Why?
That's you know what we have gone through. If you want to fight corruption in this country, you won't allow or protect any office holder to get away with blue murder.
At a time where governors are being pitched like, you know, like a slap in the hands.
No, like a drop in the hat, I know. But you see, immunity is critical for good governance. Do you want a governor to continue to steal and under the guise that you can't take him to court? Even as we speak, we have former governors. They said their immunity will not go beyond their day in office. After they left office, what has the EFCC made of former governors that have been accused of corrupt practice whilst in office? So quite sincerely, Nigeria has to decide whether you want to fight corruption head-on or you want to tolerate the frivolity of public office holders. We believe that we have to give corruption a head-on fight. And removal of immunity of the president, the vice president, the governor and deputy governor was the least that we could have done to sanitize Nigerian polity. Look at what has happened. Some governors have been impeached because they are afraid of the consequence. Some of them have jumped ship. But the day will come, because criminal acts don't have any limitation in law. Even 20 years after you committed a crime, you can still be tried for your criminal act.
So, Rod, we'll take a break now. I've been speaking with the University Dan, Professor Akin Oyebode. He's a professor of international law for over 20 years now. Of course, a former vice chancellor with the Ekiti State University. We'll be back to talk more on this account of the national conference after this break. Don't go away.
You can now watch CORETV News live from anywhere in the world on our website www.coretvnews.com. Click on Live TV on our website and watch us live.
And welcome to CORETV Primetime News.
To follow us on Twitter, click on Twitter icon on our website. On Facebook, click on the Facebook and YouTube to see all our previous news production. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Click CORETV, leave a space, then news. CORETV News, a 24-hour news station.